Hello and welcome back to the show. I am super excited today because in today's episode, we are going to be talking a little bit about a topic that is very interesting to me, which is leadership, communication, and building a successful organization in order to really increase your business and productivity in your team, or if you're a real estate brokerage owner out there, your brokerage as well. So, our guest for today is Sylvia. Sylvia is the founder of CEO Options, Creative Energy Options, and she is one of the top 30 global leadership gurus and a leadership coach who, as she mentioned a little bit earlier before the show, has a very different approach when it comes to leading your organization and helping them become more productive and communicating better with the people that are ultimately going to be responsible for your success and your business's success. So I'm very excited to have her on the show. But without further ado, Sylvia, welcome.
Thank you. Good introduction.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to have you here, and I'm excited to dig right on in into some of your knowledge and some of the things you have to share with us today. Before we do that, I would love for you to be able to share a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into this space, and a little bit about what you're doing with your organization, with your company, and how you are helping other organizations become more productive.
Well, it's interesting because I'm in the process. It's not done, but I'm writing a book called Glitters to Greatness. And it's about those moments that happen and you have to make a choice. Do I go with it, even though I'm feeling it, or do I say, nah, I better stay with what I know? So here's what happened. My background is in family therapy. You know, that's where I started, and I would sit not with an individual, occasionally an individual, but mostly with families, with couples, with parents and their children, and I would have to help orchestrate so that everybody had a chance to speak up, which is what teams have to do, right? But who knew? I mean, I had did not have leadership in my mind. I had helping families. And how I had a glimmer was one night, we were doing a program. This is in suburban Philadelphia for parents whose adolescent children were driving them a little bit bonkers. So the room was obviously pretty full. And at the end of it, a man walked over to me, and I thought he was going to talk about his son or his daughter. And he said, will you come work with my senior leadership team? And it was like so out of left field. And I looked at him and I said, why? And he said, they're fighting. To which I said, so what? When he said, but you help people get along, families. They're sort of like a family and they have to get along. And I thought, okay, I could feel that kind of glimmer, that sort of rumbling in my gut, or that feeling somewhere in my body that said, sounds interesting, makes no sense. I didn't have a background in it, but I went in, trudged in anyway. So anybody who's watching this, I would love for you to please think about those glimmers that happen in your life and what you did with them. Anyway, I went in and without sounding a little arrogant, I helped them, quote, play nicely in the sandbox, and worked with their team, and there were lots of successes. And it was one of those, he told a friend who told a friend, and all of a sudden I looked around and thought, well, damn, I'm doing leadership work, I'm doing team building, I'm not. And but the thing is, it was still, I hadn't forgotten my family therapy background. I used it because it's the same kind of thing of how you help people hear each other, how you speak up, the words you use to communicate. It's all pretty much the same. So from there, it just went into a lot of world travel. And one of the things I found is that underneath, we're really not so different. We may have some cultural changes, you're more quiet, or you don't talk about this or that, but generically, we're very similar around the world. And so, the work I'm doing, I call it evergreen because it hits everybody in some spot. So, makes sense?
Absolutely. And I do agree with you. I think the work that you are doing in communication and leadership building, a lot of people might think of that as, something very corporate or something that only applies to business owners or people who lead organizations, but, thinking of it kind of your work almost in reverse, right? Leadership and communication starts as little as in your family circle or in your circle of friends and your personal life. So this is really applicable to every aspect of somebody's life in order to make it better because we can't necessarily survive just on our own. We have to rely on the help and also help other people who are in our lives, in our organizations, if you will. So in your approach, right, you came from a family therapy background, so what would you say are some of the things that you see that are applicable in building better personal relationships that can also be applied to leading a business organization where everybody feels safe, they feel seen, and that way they're able to be more productive.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question, and it was the beginning of the a fourth book I wrote during the pandemic called Invisible Stress. It's not what you think. Everybody, and it's still going on. I mean, all the calls I get from clients now, every one of them at some point says the word stress in it. And I'll show you how it all fits together in a minute. But I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. So let's say you're sitting on a fence and you're going to fall one way or the other. Okay. And when stress comes to you, are you more prone to shout it out or stuff it down? That's my question.
Stuff it down for me.
Yeah, well, I would have bet that for two reasons. One is it's often cultural, and also more males tend to stuff it down, although there are plenty of drama kings out there. So you would fall on the side of the fence in what I call Zombieville, because it's very quiet there, because everybody there has stuffed it down, right? I, on the other hand, and many others, are very prone to shout it out. If I get really upset, man, you can hear me. You can hear me in a lot of places. I would fall on the other side. The shouted outside is Freakoutville. So you've got Zombieville and Freakoutville. Neither one works because in Zombieville, you're going to get physically sick if you don't start to say what's really upsetting you. And in Freakoutville, you can also get upset, but you're also going to push people away because they're going to say, oh, I've heard him or her do that. It's getting old. What we want to do is get people into that middle ground where they can be in the safe stress zone, where they practice safe stress. You've got to learn how to practice safe stress. It's good for you. It's good for me. It's good for the planet. But how does that go into working together? Well, we all know that work and stress are related. And so how you handle it is going to be the way you handle it no matter where you are. And what we have to do is learn, how did we get that way? Why did I learn? Where did I learn to stuff it down, or where did I learn to shout it out? So for me, I'll just share mine. I'm not asking you to share yours, but everybody who's watching, listening, think about what I'm going to say now. I mean, I grew up in a family. I have an older brother, and he was kind of king of the hill. So whatever he said was wonderful. And I was just kind of the cute little extra, the cute little girl. And so if I wanted to be heard, I had to make a fuss. So I learned very early, if I want to be heard, have a hissy fit. Now that's very deeply embedded in my nervous system. And, as one of the major people in neurology said, patterns that neurons that wire together, fire together, wire together. So if you keep doing the same thing in the same way, it becomes automatic and it becomes a very quick response, which is what we do when we get triggered. So when you get triggered, Kobe, what happens? You
Stuff it down.
zip it. Yeah, you zip it. And when I get triggered, man, you can hear me around the block. Neither way is going to work. So what I did as I went into the business world is I looked at the patterns that develop when we were children. because that's where it started. I mean, I was a little girl and I really quickly saw, oh, if I want to be heard, they're going to hear my brother first. I've got to be louder than he is. And in many cultures, it's very impolite or inappropriate to say things out loud, and you're careful there. And in many families, it's the same way. We do these things for security and safety and survival. Some of it is actually survival. You learn very early. If I say that, I'm going to get a whack on the side of my head. So I'm not going to say it, or I'll tell them, but I won't tell him or her. We learn that very early. We bring that to work with us. Everybody who manages a team, once you're not going to become family therapist, you're not going to become a psychologist, but you're going to become a great leader once you start to learn this stuff, because everybody comes into the room with their old patterns. Now, they don't have to show up all the time, but when we get triggered, they're there. So in my work, I have developed 13 patterns. It's a lot of patterns, but I tried to cut them down, and I couldn't. I had maybe 20 when I started, but it's like one pattern is the super achiever. And I don't need to know if that's you, but I'm bet you know somebody who is that. It's usually the me guy or gal. They've got to be first. They always take up a lot of airtime when they're there. And their reasons they learned as kids, I have to prove to my family how good I am. So I have to be the best. And in families, you'll have we all play roles, and I don't want to get too deeply into the family part of this because I want to keep it on leadership. But you will begin to see if somebody is a me, always has to be first, has the best answer, will jump in and critique somebody. Uh, you don't have to say anything, but have a sense that maybe they learned that very early so they would get pats on the back or, the kind of approval they wanted. You don't have to judge it. What do you do with it once you see it? The first thing you do if you have a super achiever is you have to acknowledge them. They will not hear anything you want to say until they get acknowledged. It's almost like they become, covers over their ears. So the first thing with a super achiever is to say, you did a really not a good job. You did a really excellent job. If you want to use great, excellent, wonderful, but you have to say, and then if they're taking up too much airspace, you can say, and here's some thoughts I have in observing this that may be helpful to you to stay at the top of your game. So if it's a super achiever, they have to be acknowledged. If they're told anything they do will keep them at the top of their game, they're going to listen. And in leadership, how we communicate and what we communicate makes a big difference. Now, any questions so far? Because I can just keep rolling along. So you tell me.
No, you keep going. I think this is very valuable actually what you just shared because in the real estate space, there's a lot of, teams where there are, many super achievers that are out there, the top producers, if you will. And a lot of teams having trouble communicating with them as far as helping them improve. So that was actually something very valuable. But no, please continue.
Okay. Well, that's what I want to give are some of the tips and tidbits. In the a book I wrote 10 years ago, Don't Bring It to Work, Breaking the Family Patterns That Limit Success. There's a lot of that in there. So and it's pretty interesting. Well, I wrote it. What am I going to say? It's a boring book. No, it's pretty good. But anyway, now once you have that super achiever so they can hear you, you don't want to lose that great success that they want, but they also have to be a team player, right? And often super achievers turn people off. They'll walk away from them. If there could be a collaborative deal, they'll go to somebody that they feel is easier to work with than, the me guy or gal. Once you get there, you can also help them see that a super achiever transformed becomes a creative collaborator. they learn that, and this is what I think we saw even with the eclipse. It's that things are connected beyond what we're aware of. And, there was a sense of awe I saw with so many people watching this just to see, and it seemed like there was no fighting, which usually goes on when there are large crowds. I was checking for that. But the idea is to transform these patterns into what will be their, I call their healthy opposite. So the super achiever becomes, instead of a me, they more in the we world, that they'll collaborate. And it's all about how you ask questions, how you listen. And we'll get into that in a minute. I just want to do a couple more of the patterns. So that's one, that's a big one. Another one that often has a woman's name on it is the pleaser. And the pleaser is somebody who will say yes to just about anyway. In here, they're thinking, you've got to be kidding. Are you out of your mind? But it won't come out of their mouth. And what happens is that women for a long time, but there are plenty of male pleasers too. So I don't want to just, put this in a gender box. On the other hand, women have for so long been told, you can't speak up. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but there was just something, I think it was 50 years ago, a few days ago, that women were permitted to sign for a credit card without uh, her husband or a father co-signing with her. I mean,
Not know that.
yeah, pretty interesting. And women were not permitted in juries till, I don't know, 20 years ago. Only men. There's a wonderful film. It's an older film if somebody wants to watch it, called 12 Angry Men with Jack Lemmon, that takes place in New York in a court scene, but it's the jury, the 12. And I thought, why is it only men? So I had to research it to find out, well, they wouldn't let women on juries in those days. So women have learned, and there's so many women in real estate who, um, we want to please. We want to get people to their best homes, to their best, business deals if they're buying a commercial property, so forth and so on. But the ability for the pleaser to transform becomes a truth teller. A pleaser, and I'll give you one quick one. There was somebody I worked with, and she was the head of a major team, and her boss was kind of almost addicted to buying new businesses. So one day we were in a meeting, and I had been working with the team for quite a while, and he said, "Oh, I'm buying another business," and they were stretched. They couldn't go any further than they were, and everybody just exhaled and just sort of looked away. And I looked at her and she looked at me, the gal who was in charge. And I just sort of nodded, like, now or never. And she said, I don't think that's such a good idea. I think we're all at the place where we can't take on one more thing. And he looked at her and he said, but you've never said that before. You've always said yes. And she said, well, Sylvia and I have been working on my pleaser attitude, and I'm now telling the truth. So everybody was still watching, and he was very confused. So we took a break, and the three of us, the owner of the companies, asked this gal and I went in a room to talk. And he said, why did you do that? She said, because we couldn't do anymore. And we are hard workers and we want to succeed, but we can't go past what is, really humanly possible. And he looked at her and he said, I almost can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's a relief that you said that. Because he said, I was so sure you were going to say yes. I was so sure we'd get the business. And then I would watch everything implode. This way, at least I'm getting the truth. So pleasers become truth tellers. Super achievers become creative adversaries, creative people to work together. And in the books, I don't want to go into all the patterns, but what I saw is they're there. And when you begin to see the pattern, it's not your job to say to somebody, you are a denier or you are a procrastinator. But when you see it, you can begin to acknowledge where they are and then begin to ask questions or help them guide them to see things differently. So that's the big success I've been having. So
Yeah, that's
keep
very
going.
interesting. No, that's very interesting because I love that you brought up the point where, it's not your job to tell somebody that you notice these patterns in them. And I think for a lot of, a lot of leaders that are out there, they like to do that, right? They like to not necessarily judge, but they like to point out people's flaws or, people's, um, their way of behaving, if you will, and tell them to change it. And that's not, at least in my opinion, that's not the right way to do it, right? Because every single person, they have their own unique way of dealing with situations, dealing with problems, and they're all going to have their own way of changing and improving as well. So my question is, as a leader, when you start identifying some of these patterns or, just any patterns of behavior in your team members that you think from your experience and perspective and your level that they're going to be on a path of either you know not sound but like self-destruction or not doing well or they're not going to reach the goals that they've set out for themselves. What is a correct way, a healthy way to actually get them back on track so that way they can reach their full potential and maybe realize these problems on their own.
Well, I'm a big proponent of questions, but the questions cannot be answered yes or no. I mean, this is sort of basic throughout communication skills learning, because when you ask a question, do you like that? Your choice is either yes or no. Sometimes people say maybe, and then they're pushed yes or no. I don't know where, but it clicks something off in the brain. Okay. So questions will lead you to help whoever you're working with see for themselves what needs to be done. And so the questions are, what is it you need that you're not getting? That's open ended. And a lot of people may say, oh, nothing. And then get, what I'm giving you right now, take it to the bank. It's gold. It's 3 words. And the words are, tell me more. Those words are, I mean, when I first started working with deeper communication skills, I was kind of fascinated. Could something as simple as 3 words, tell me more, get people to tell you more? You're going to have to try it for yourselves. But usually you get to a place, and in communication, when you're working with another person or other people, there are all these threads going around the room. It's not just one straight line. And my greatest delight is when people will say, they'll call me and say, I talked with so and so, and I'll go, and what happened? They'll say, I learned something I never knew before. If you can be curious about the other person, because we're living in a culture right now that is so black and white, yes and no, right or wrong. It's so stuck that we've got to get to that middle place of saying, well, you're right and you're right. And I don't agree with your point of view, but I can see how you got there. And I'm not here to push you out. I'm here to help you so we can work together. That's where leaders really do very well. So there are lots of sentences that can be used, but uh, tell me more. Everybody who's watching this, do it with somebody and see what happens. I'll bet you anything you get a nugget of something you that surprises you. Another is help me understand. Help me understand. That doesn't mean you're dumb. It doesn't mean you can't, add 2 and 2. It means I need something from you so that I can do better. Relationships are this, they're connected, and we have stopped seeing that. And that makes me very sad, and it's in every organization that I work with that we have to work at saying, um, "I want to include your ideas, and I want you to include my ideas," and somewhere in the middle of that is something even better. It's the, "I never thought of it that way before," that we're headed for. So that's kind of where we move with some of this stuff.
Yeah. So the ability, I would say, the ability to acknowledge, accept, and understand a point of view that you don't agree with is so important when it comes to communicating. And I think you just, absolutely hit the nail on the head there when you said if you have the ability to recognize somebody else's opinion or their point of view, not necessarily agree with it, but understand it, because understanding and agreeing are completely two different things. Understanding is seeing something and basically accepting that it exists and it is okay for that opinion to exist, versus agreeing means that is your point of view. And if everybody in the world agrees, then there's only one point of view. So we don't necessarily even want that to happen. So another thing I think is very important for, I would say, leaders to understand is, what is the balance and how do you create that balance between driving your team, your organization forward in a direction that you see is going to be the best for that organization, versus taking in everybody else's opinions and potentially making a pivot or a shift. So where does that balance lie? How do we find it and make sure that we're not either pleasing people too much or, not listening to other people's opinions at all?
Well, you just asked one of the hardest questions to answer there is, because when you think about balance, it's always moving, you know? I mean, it cannot be static. It's not possible. I was thinking as you were talking of the teeter-totter that little kids go on, and sometimes it's fun to be up there with your feet dangling down and you at the bottom, holding the power. And sometimes it's better to be holding the power. But if you stay there for very long, you couldn't. Either somebody would get off and, or they'd scream for help, but you can't stay there that long. My theory with that is we have to look at another piece that I've been working with a lot. It's a little more complicated to talk about, but it's systems theory. And it's really how things are connected and how you have to look at both short-term goals and long-term goals. And most of the leaders who you're mentioning who would say, "Well, I have the vision, I know how to get there, and you all will follow me because I'm smarter than you are," or "I won't tell you that, but I am, but I have the vision." Um, Often they will get to a certain point, but by then they will have begun or they already have lost many employees because there is a, if it's my dream and I'm asking you to buy into it, you damn well better have a good reason to buy into the dream. Otherwise, I wrote something, and anybody who's interested, I do blogs twice a week. It's on www.ceoptions.com. I did one last week because I'm working with a company like that. And I wrote about serfs, SERFS, not slaves because they can't be bought or sold, but they are working the ground and they can't own any of it and they have no place else to go. And I had said somebody within this group had said to me, "I feel like a serf." And it's a funny old word we don't hear very often. So I did a little bit of research. So I wrote about it because what happens is if it's your dream, and you don't have the skill, if you will, or the vision or the desire to engage others, then they're serfs. And at some point, they're gonna slow down and stop working. And that's what's happening in this other company. They're all complaining. So I have set it up for them to talk to the boss, whose dream is a good one. It's just that it's his, and he's not including others. So they're going to talk about the pros of what they're doing and the cons of what they're doing, and then begin to look at how they can find a way to be more inclusive. And it's not going to be easy because this guy's dream is a big dream, and it's since he was a kid, and he doesn't want anybody to get in the way. But he'll lose it. He won't have it if he keeps going this way. He'll be all alone saying, "Where'd they all go? I need them." And they're not there.
Right. So that's very powerful what you just brought up, because there are so many people, and like you said, right, it's, these dreams that people have, they could be great, right? They could be very impactful and positive and powerful dreams, but sometimes I see a lot of people, and I think we're all, we all have a little bit of that within ourselves as well, especially if we're passionate about doing something, is we lose track of the people around us that we absolutely need in order to get us to that point, because we are so tunnel vision and focused on getting to that goal, and we think nobody else in the world understands us. So we don't take the time to understand them, we don't take the time to include them, to ask for their perspectives and their thoughts, and make it so that this project is really, this dream, if you will, is collaborative, and not just, like you said, having these other people in your organization, the people that you're working with, that are working with you, that are helping you, having them feel like serfs, having them feel like people who are just another cog, if you will, in your machine.
Yeah, well, in this group, they keep saying, "Why are we here?" A group of them asked me if I would do this with them, and their question was, "Why are we here to make him so rich and famous?" And I said, "Well, that's a good question. Why? And what do you get out of it? And what's the benefit?" And if you can be open the discussion, as you just said, it can lead to the same success, but with a lot more joy than what we're saying. And it's interesting because one of the other patterns is the persecutor or the bully boss, and once they learn why they're so obsessed with this success, why they have to get where they're going, is they become really great visionaries. A visionary who knows what he or she is really doing, and as a true visionary, is inclusive. It's not just about, we're all going to have candy to eat at the end of the day. It's about here's what somebody would like, here's what somebody else would like, but it's all going to be there for us to have. So the visionary the persecutor or bully boss becomes a visionary. And a lot of entrepreneurs who begin to become successful, I'm sorry to say it, are known as bully bosses or persecutors. But once they find that sweet spot to help people so they can have for their lives something beneficial. I'm not a Pollyanna, and I'm not talking about, everybody holding hands and singing Kumbaya. I used to get that back in the day. Oh, here comes Sylvia, and we're all going to have to hold hands. No, you're all going to have to learn how to deal with conflict, and you're all going to have to learn how to tell the truth. And I want to add, this is so important. Telling the truth is not spilling your guts. Exclamation point. And that is so important. I learned that early on, and I'll give you the example. We were in an offsite, happened to be a brokerage firm. Interesting. And there was a kind of persecutor boss in the vision thing. Anyway, we're in this meeting, and somebody said whatever they said, and the gal who was in charge said, "Well, that was really stupid." And I thought, couldn't she have found a better way to say that? But I didn't say anything at the moment. And then she said, "And furthermore, you said blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah." And that didn't make sense either. At that point, this group of about 15 people all started to slide under the conference table because they didn't want to be hit either. And at that point, I said, let's take a break. Anybody there who does facilitation, when it gets really, really rocky, take a 5-minute break or a 10-minute break, a bio break, a tea break, or whatever. So we took a break, and I took this gal and we went into another room, and I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, I'm just doing what you teach." I said, "Like what?" She said, "Well, telling the truth." And it was at that moment I got that the truth is very, very, it's short sentences. It's not about blaming, but telling the truth is not spilling your guts. Anyway, we came back and she apologized, and we spent time talking about what it is like to tell the truth. It's okay to be upset with people. It's okay to tell them that things have to be done differently, but there is a way of doing it. And there's a graciousness to do it, male or female, it's gracious to do it. We've lost that right now in our culture, but hopefully we'll get it back. But telling the truth is not spilling your guts. Got it?
I love that. I absolutely love that. And you see so many people, you know, fall under that same umbrella, right? Of they think they're telling the truth when in reality, I mean, if you think about it, they're actually just airing out their opinions and they're airing out their attitudes towards other people and they're airing out their frustrations. Because the truth is, it should be, like you said, very simple. It shouldn't contain any judgment, any opinions, any frustration. It's just the truth, right? So a lot of people, and just going back to what we were talking about earlier, a lot of times that will happen and everybody else within the organization will see it and they'll stop working as hard, they'll stop putting their passion into their work, and essentially that's when everything starts falling apart, if you will. And it's very counterintuitive to what the leader themselves want to accomplish, which is, let's get to this goal, let's get to it the right way, and let's do it fast. But understanding that you need a lot of people, and you need a lot of people who are interested and passionate and invested in this project in their own unique ways to also help you and work with you to get there. A lot of times they'll you know they'll break that, right? And they don't see it that way, but they'll offend their team members, and they're never going to get to their goals because they've been offending their team members.
Yeah. So when you're in a group and you're listening to people, I started counting words. How many words do we need to have a truth sentence? They're short. They're between 7 and 9 words, and they're not run-on sentences, and they don't include "and furthermore." The sentences are short, you know? I mean, once you have to learn to really, it's like a wild horse, you have to hold back. But in so many places, and furthermore, I start to go, "Oh, now we're getting into the land of trouble." The "and furthermore. So what you said really hurt me. So what I'd like to do is give everybody a model now. You're gonna have to write it down, but it's short. And it goes like this. When you Now, in the past, we've taught you have to start with I statements. Listen to this. When you, and you fill in the rest of the sentence. So you're saying, this is from my observation, something you are doing. The next sentence is, I feel. And the word feel is an interesting word. It's an emotion word. It's not abstract. So I'm going to give you an example. When you always come to the meetings late, I feel discounted. Okay. So you've just painted the scene. When you tell me the work will be handed in tomorrow and it's not there, I feel angry. Okay. So what do you do with that? Then there are 2 more sentences. So when you come to the meeting late, I feel discounted. And you're going to talk about yourself. And then I shut you off when you're going to talk because you've been late at the meeting. And then I stop. And then you say, what I'm willing to do is discuss what needs to be done differently. What I'm not willing to do is ignore it. And then the big sentence, and now I'd like to hear from you. It's a full package.
Very good.
When you, I feel, and then what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do, and now I'd like to hear from you.
Wow. That was a very, very good framework for people who, I think, especially for me, right? We talked about earlier, who stuff things down, right? Who might not have, I guess, the healthy way or the correct way to address these concerns that you have with people that you're working with. That is the most complete framework that I've heard and seen anywhere when it comes to conflict resolution and addressing these things that are better off being addressed than just being left ignored.
Well, if they're ignored, they go underneath and they become a chronic issue, chronic emotional or chronic physical, but it becomes a chronic issue. So it's a great framework. And, it feels awkward at first because you feel like you're pretending something, you're reading from a script. But once you get used to saying, you know, people would say, well, I don't want to talk about them. Well, you have to. If you're upset with them, what are you going to talk about? When you call, I've HR has taken this, the companies I've worked with, the HR area has just loved this. But I've watched it. I've sat in so many meetings where I've watched the conflict in the room. And finally, somebody will say, when you tell us what we have to do without asking us, I feel invisible. And then I think I want to get a different job. I mean, people have actually said that. What I'm willing to do is see if there's a better way because I love it here. What I'm not willing to do is pretend everything's okay. And then the big one, and now I'd like to hear from you. And it's also accountability. You're talking about you're describing the scene, but you're talking about your behavior. You're not talking about their behavior, other than in the beginning to describe it. It's very, very powerful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Well,
that's my gift for today.
oh, that's a really, really generous and powerful gift, Sylvia. And I just want to say thank you for joining us on the show today. You shared, I think, one of the most powerful templates, if you will, and frameworks for communication, whether you are a leader or just, you know, in an organization that are working with other people, which we all are. And you shared a ton of value with us today as well in your own unique way. And I want to thank you again for being here and for our viewers and our listeners that want to know more about what you're doing. Maybe they want to get their hands on one of your books, or maybe they want you to come in and help them in their organizations as well. If they're leading a team or a brokerage, what are some of the best ways for people to reach you and follow you?
Well, the best way, go on www.ceoptions. It's ceoptions.com. 10 CE options. And you can sign up for the newsletter. You can, at the end, you can contact me. But if you really have something you want to say, I love when I get personal contacts. It would be to my email, Sylvia with a Y, Sylvia at ceoptions.com. The only other thing I want to say is I have books. People aren't reading as much as they used to, so which makes me sad, but I have Don't Bring It to Work. I have Gutsy, How Women Leaders Make Change. It's a good one. Unique, about diversity, and also the stress book, which a lot of people are reading right now. More than that is their online 4-module programs that people can sign up for. And if you would like to, and it's through this podcast with Kobe, just put, I heard you on Kobe's podcast, or I saw you on Kobe's podcast, and you'll get a 20% discount. Not that expensive anyway. I'm keeping stuff in a range that people can afford. Most people. Anyway.
Awesome. Thank you.
So thank you. Your questions and your synthesis of what I've said has been quite excellent. So I want to acknowledge that.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. I appreciate that, and we will make sure to leave all of the links to those books and the best ways to reach you and your website in the description and show notes down below. Thank you again for being here. Before we let you go, is there any last pieces of advice, any last tips you want to leave with us here today?
The only thing, because we're coming out of such a disconnected way from COVID through what we've been living through in the world, is to pay attention to those glimmers. It's kind of like fireworks in your gut or an opening of your heart, and pay attention because they will lead you where you need to go. That's the work I'm doing now, and it's fun. So glimmers to greatness is good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sylvia. Appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you on the next show. Take care.